In Stoic Men Tribe, today we're tapping into a powerful truth, a moment of inner strength, sharp clarity and timeless wisdom. Don't skip any part of this video, share your thoughts in the comment. Please do us a favor by hitting the subscribe button, like and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's break it down. Arguing destroys you more than you think. There's a kind of tired that doesn't show up in your muscles. A kind of weariness that doesn't come from long hours or lack of sleep. It creeps in slowly, not with weight but with noise, not with movement but with friction. It's not the exhaustion of carrying groceries or climbing stairs. It's the exhaustion of holding on to conversations that leave you empty, of defending yourself in battles you never signed up for, of explaining your heart to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. It's the quiet fatigue of emotional tension, of repeating yourself for the 5th time, not because they didn't hear you, but because they never intended to listen. It's the dull ache of trying to prove a point to someone whose ego is louder than their empathy. This isn't physical exhaustion, it's spiritual erosion. It's the draining of your inner stillness. Drop by drop, word by word, moment by moment, until there's nothing left but static in your soul. You think it's just a conversation, just a disagreement, just a moment to clear the air. But what's really happening is that you're handing over your peace in exchange for noise. You're giving away your clarity in exchange for chaos. You're trading your time, your truth, your emotional oxygen for a battle that leaves no one better than before. You don't see it right away, because the damage isn't loud. It's subtle, like a slow leak in the foundation of a house. Until one day you wake up wondering why everything feels so heavy, why you're constantly on edge, why your thoughts are louder than your peace, why your energy disappears so quickly, even when you've done nothing. You've done something. You've been arguing. You've been defending, explaining, proving. You've been pouring yourself into cracks that don't want to be sealed, into minds that don't want to understand, into dynamics built on power struggles, not mutual respect. And here's the hardest part to swallow. You can win the argument and still lose yourself. You can be right and still be completely off course. Because arguing isn't always communication. Sometimes it's just disguised chaos. Sometimes it's not your wisdom speaking. It's your wounds. Sometimes it's not truth you're defending. It's your pride. And pride will drag you into wars your higher self wants no part of. Pride will keep you fighting long after the battle has become meaningless. Pride will convince you that silence is weakness, when really it's your greatest strength. Because silence doesn't mean surrender. It means self-respect. It means restraint. It means choosing your peace over someone else's need to be loud. It means protecting your calm like your future depends on it. Because it does. So the next time you feel pulled into that familiar fight, pause. Not everything needs a reaction. Not every accusation needs a response. Not every disagreement is an invitation worth accepting. Some arguments are traps. Some conversations are prisons. And some people are only present to drain, not to understand. Walk away. Not because you're weak, but because you finally remembered your worth. Let them think what they want. Let them twist your silence into whatever story they need. Because peace doesn't beg to be understood. It simply is, still powerful, untouchable. And that's your new strength. Not louder words, not sharper comebacks, just deeper calm. Because in the end, arguing destroys you more than you think. Not with force, but with erosion. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, completely. It's the weight of tension that sits in your chest after a heated exchange. The heaviness behind your eyes when you've spent too long trying to explain yourself to someone who was never listening. Not really. It's the slow erosion of your spirit from battles you never needed to fight. This kind of exhaustion comes from one thing: conflict, but not the productive kind. Not the kind where two people seek truth and understanding. The kind that leaves you drained, bitter, and questioning your own peace. The kind that begins with defensiveness and ends with regret. Because every time you argue for validation, every time you raise your voice hoping to be heard, not realizing you're shouting into deaf ears, every time you abandon your own calm to match the chaos of another, you chip away at something sacred inside of you. You give your peace away. Not all at once, but slowly, piece by piece. One sarcastic response, one angry reply, one sleepless night spent replaying a conversation that should have ended before it began. You think you're defending your point, you think you're standing up for yourself, but what you're really doing is surrendering your serenity. And here's the thing, most arguments don't resolve anything. They just reveal how deeply the ego wants to win, even if it means losing your inner world. Because when you argue from a place of pride, fear, or past pain, you're not communicating. You're reacting. You're protecting wounds that haven't healed. You're dragging your mind through emotional mud, hoping the noise will make you feel clean. It doesn't. It just leaves you tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of defending. Tired of trying to prove something to someone who benefits from your confusion. Some people argue not to understand, but to control, to dominate, to stir you into matching their emotional instability. And the truth, you can't win a battle against someone committed to misunderstanding you. You can't find peace through proving. You can't hold your power if you keep giving your energy away to the wrong fights. There comes a moment in your evolution where you realize that silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. That walking away is not surrender, it's strategy. That choosing peace is not avoidance, it's protection. Protection of your focus, protection of your heart, protection of your path. Because when you waste your energy trying to correct the wrong people, you lose momentum for the right mission. And your mission is too important to waste on petty wars. You weren't built to be dragged into every conflict. You weren't made to constantly defend your name to people who've already made up their minds. You weren't created to drown in noise just to prove you have a voice. You are here for clarity, for purpose, for peace that doesn't require explanation. So next time you feel that heat rise in your chest, pause. Not every invitation to argue is worth accepting. Not every conversation is meant to be had. Not every opinion needs a response. Sometimes your silence is the loudest thing you can say. Sometimes your calm is your greatest power. Because in a world obsessed with noise, stillness is strength. And you deserve to protect it. There comes a moment not marked by time, but by exhaustion. When you realize you're no longer arguing to be understood. You're just arguing to feel heard, even by the ones who stopped listening long ago. You raise your voice not for clarity, but from the ache of not being seen. You defend yourself not out of confidence, but out of desperation to be accepted by those who've already made up their minds. And in that slow unraveling, you lose something sacred. Not your pride, not your reputation, but your peace. Because every time you enter a battle that doesn't need to be fought, you trade a piece of your inner world for momentary noise. You think you're standing your ground. You think you're proving a point. But what you're really doing is giving someone else the power to pull you out of alignment, to pull you out of grace, out of stillness, out of yourself. And the most dangerous thing, it happens silently, slowly. One retort, one reply. One moment of defensiveness disguised as courage. But courage isn't found in every comeback. Sometimes it's found in restraint. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not respond, because not every person deserves your explanation. Not every misunderstanding deserves your correction. Not every insult needs your reaction. You can't build peace while constantly proving your worth. You can't protect your energy while pouring it into people who twist your words into weapons. You may win the argument, sure. You may even get the last word. But what did it cost you? Your focus? Your day? Your sleep? You don't walk away from arguments because you're weak. You walk away because you're wise. You've outgrown the need to convince people who thrive off conflict. You've outgrown the illusion that being loud means being right. You've outgrown the chase of being understood by those who only ever wanted to debate, not to connect. inner stillness is not passive. It's power, refined, restrained, reserved. It is knowing that peace is not something you find in someone else's approval, but something you protect within yourself like sacred ground. So yes, there will be times when you're tempted to clap back, to defend, to correct the narrative. But pause. Ask yourself, is this worth your clarity? Is this worth your calm? Is this worth your alignment? Because every argument has a cost, and not every cost is worth paying. Let them misunderstand. Let them talk. Let them think what they will. You're not here to win debates. You're here to win your life back. Sometimes it's not about being right, not about proving your point, not about crafting the perfect response to dismantle their argument. Sometimes it's about what's left of you after the words are gone, after you've spilled your soul in a conversation that never deserved your depth, after you've unraveled your emotions in front of someone who never held the capacity to receive them, after you've exhausted your breath, defending truths that needed no defense, just distance. You see, not all damage is loud. Some of it happens in whispers, in sighs, in long silences after heated exchanges, and you don't always notice it right away. But every argument with the wrong person leaves behind a residue, a subtle erosion of your peace, a quiet draining of your emotional energy, a heaviness in your chest that follows you long after the conversation ends, because you weren't heard, you weren't met with care, you weren't speaking to someone who wanted to understand, only someone who wanted to win. They didn't ask to understand your side. They waited for their turn to speak. They twisted your intentions into ammunition for their defense. And you kept trying to clarify, trying to explain, trying to stay kind in a space that had already turned into a battlefield. And maybe it felt noble at first, this desire to be understood. But there's a cost to being generous with people who only show up with sharpened edges. It's not that your words aren't valuable. It's that not every person is safe enough to hold them. You cannot reason with someone who only hears to validate their own narrative. You cannot reach someone who confuses vulnerability with weakness and uses your openness to elevate their ego. You cannot find peace in people who only understand war. And slowly, without realizing it, you're left empty. Not because you lost the argument, but because you lost yourself in it. Because your peace was chipped away word by word. Because your calm was sacrificed on the altar of being right. Because your spirit bent too far in trying to hold a bridge that was never built on mutual respect. Let them misunderstand you. Let them paint you wrong. Let them sit in their version of the story. You don't need to correct every false narrative. You don't need to explain your soul to people committed to misreading it. You don't need to keep bleeding emotionally in battles that aren't sacred, only exhausting. Your clarity is too precious to waste on noise. Your inner stillness is too sacred to be shaken by the storm of someone else's projections. There is wisdom in silence. There is strength in walking away. There is power in letting go of the need to always be understood, especially by people who never tried to understand you in the first place. So choose peace. Choose boundaries. Choose your healing over the habit of always responding. Not everything deserves your voice. Not everyone deserves your truth. And not every conversation needs to be had. Because in the end, it's not about being right. It's about staying whole. Arguing isn't always communication. Let's start there. Because not every exchange of words is a meeting of minds. Not every loud conversation is a path toward understanding. And not every discussion is grounded in truth, respect, or love. Sometimes arguing is just chaos, wearing the mask of conviction. Sometimes it's noise pretending to be clarity. Sometimes it's ego dressed up as, I'm just being honest. Let's be real with ourselves. A lot of what we call arguing is just our unhealed wounds reaching for control. It's our insecurities disguised as intellect. It's the younger parts of us, the ones that were ignored. Because even when you win the argument, you might lose the moment. You might lose your calm. You might lose your alignment. And for what? To be right in the eyes of someone who never saw you clearly to begin with? Here's the hard truth. Not every situation needs your explanation. Not every misunderstanding deserves your energy. and not every person is worthy of access to your inner world, especially if their presence turns your mind into a battlefield. It takes strength to argue, but it takes even more strength to walk away, to pause, to breathe, to say, this no longer deserves my reaction, to choose emotional discipline over emotional chaos, to choose stillness over noise, to choose growth over the need to be heard by those who never truly listened. Because real power? It isn't found in domination, it's found in detachment. When you can sit in a storm and not let it in, when you can be provoked and not perform, when you can feel misunderstood and still choose to protect your peace. So the next time the urge to argue rises in your chest, ask yourself, what am I really fighting for? And is it worth the pieces of myself I'm giving away just to be right? Because maybe it's not about being right anymore. Maybe it's about being free. If someone can't recognize your value in your silence, they won't suddenly understand your worth just because you speak louder. Because true recognition isn't triggered by volume, it's born from depth. And some people aren't willing to go that deep. They're listening for noise, not nuance. They're searching for drama, not dignity. They're drawn to chaos, not calm. So when you choose silence, it isn't because you're out of things to say. It's because you've grown tired of shouting wisdom into ears that only crave validation. It's because you finally realize that your peace is too precious to trade for temporary ego battles. It's because you've matured past the need to defend who you are to people committed to misunderstanding you. Silence is not weakness. It is restraint. It is control. It is self-respect in its rawest form. It's the understanding that just because someone throws chaos at you doesn't mean you have to throw your clarity away in response. It's the strength to say, I know I could destroy you with the truth, but I love myself too much to lower my frequency just to win an argument. Silence is strength because it allows you to respond, not react. It gives you time to feel, to breathe, to think. It protects you from the trap of emotional warfare where no one really wins, where pride gets louder and love disappears. There is deep power in walking away, in letting someone else believe they won. Let them have the last word. You have chosen to keep your last bit of peace because at some point you realize your energy is currency. Your attention is gold. Your emotional presence is not something to be thrown away on people who treat it like it's cheap. You've overpaid for relationships that drained you. You've invested in conversations that only made you question your worth. You've begged for clarity from people who thrive in confusion. And now, you're done. You're done proving yourself to people who only want your performance, not your soul. You're done explaining your intentions to people who twist them to fit their narrative. You're done wasting emotional credit on interactions that always leave you in debt. Silence is how you reclaim yourself. It's how you say, I'm no longer available for conversations that cost me my self-respect. You're not being cold. You're being conscious. You're not being passive. You're being powerful. You're not avoiding confrontation. You're choosing elevation, because not every fire needs your breath to grow. Not every battle deserves your sword, and not every voice deserves a reply. Let them think you've given up. Let them assume you lost the fight. Let them label your silence however they need to, because they were never listening anyway. You're not silent because you have nothing to say. You're silent because not everyone deserves to hear you speak. You've just decided to protect your peace, and that is a conversation that needs no explanation. Arguing drains you in ways you don't even notice at first. Not like a sudden blow, but like a slow leak. You think you're just standing up for yourself, just defending your truth. But underneath the surface, your energy is bleeding out. It's like emotional quicksand. The more you try to prove your point, the more you fight to be heard. The deeper you sink into a place where peace no longer exists, where logic gives way to ego, where truth becomes tangled in tones, where every sentence feels like a swing, and you start confusing volume with value. You begin the argument thinking you're about to solve something, fix something, clarify something. But halfway through, you're not even sure what you're fighting for anymore. the issue becomes the person. The goal becomes the win. The purpose becomes power. And power without direction is destruction. And the worst part? You might actually win. You might have the sharper words. You might have the stronger logic. You might dominate the debate, control the narrative, and get the last word. But what did you really gain? You might win the argument, but lose the connection. Win the intellectual battle, but create emotional distance. Win the debate, but bruise someone's heart. Win the point, but forfeit your peace. Because arguing, especially when it's fueled by ego, fear, or unhealed wounds, isn't just about ideas. It's about identities. And once the conversation becomes a battlefield of egos, no one walks away whole. The scars are subtle. A shift in tone, a silence that lingers too long, a trust that bends just enough to weaken everything. And even if you patch it up, it's never quite the same, because words once thrown in anger don't just disappear, they echo. So the question becomes, is it worth it? Is it worth burning your internal peace just to be right? Is it worth carrying the weight of tension in your chest just to hear someone say, okay, fine, you win? Is it worth twisting your own emotional stability into knots just to come out on top in a conversation that never truly served either of you? Sometimes walking away isn't cowardice. It's clarity. Sometimes staying silent isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Sometimes letting someone else feel like they won is the only way you actually stay free. Because not every opinion needs your response. Not every disagreement needs your energy. Not every challenge is worth accepting. True strength isn't always in the comeback. Sometimes it's in the calm. Sometimes it's in the choice to say, I will not sacrifice my mental clarity to prove something to someone who isn't listening with an open heart.